Good evening, everybody, and welcome to week 5 in CA 121. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session. We have a great crowd here this evening. Welcome, Crystal, and good evening, Chef Suzanne. We had a higher submission rate this week in this class, and that's fantastic. Good job for those of you that stepped it up to the plate and got your work in on time. Thank you very much for your effort. It really helps you in the long run because what it does is it gives you the chance to make any necessary adjustments or whatever else Chef Suzanne suggests to help enhance the quality of your assignment. So good job, everybody. We appreciate that. And then on to backwards week 4. How was week 4 for everybody? And then I know Crystal was just sharing her cutlets. Crystal, how was the preparation process? How'd that go for you?
It was simple. I thought it was gonna be more difficult, but it was simple.
Did you remember to do one hand wet, one hand dry?
Yes.
Oh, good job, good job. So it didn't make too much of a mess in the kitchen.
No, I was surprised. I usually make a big mess, but everything was so, I guess the way I organized the stuff, it was so simple.
Oh, awesome. That's great. And you know, one thing I love, and you were just talking about this, but when something is prepared or something comes out of our kitchen and we get great feedback from our guests, it feels so good. And you were mentioning you had a lot of really positive feedback, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a payday for chefs in a sense when we create something and serve it. And Chef Suzanne just showed some of your food, and I thought it was very nicely done. So thumbs up and excellent job. Chef Suzanne, what's your feedback on week 4?
I actually saw some really nice looking food this week. Lots of chicken. Several people, and for their vegetable, did pan fried. I saw eggplant. I saw zucchini. So I saw a lot of things that were pan fried this week. The only issue that I saw is a handful of people, instead of doing the standard breading procedure, left something out. So instead of doing the flour, the egg, and the breadcrumbs, I would see like just egg and breading. So just to make sure that everyone is remembering the standard breading procedure steps. But there's a lot of creative sauces. I saw tomato sauces, so for some chicken parmesan. Crystal is one who did white gravy, so I saw white gravy. I believe I saw hollandaise sauce this week. So I saw some really folks really stepping outside of their comfort zone, and I think this is the week that I think I've seen the most comments about, kind of like Crystal, where the family loved it. Everybody loved the food this week. So they're feeding people going, bring it on, that was good, do it again.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful feedback. And it's like we were just mentioning, it feels so good to kind of hear, people come back and really know that they really enjoyed their food. So that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Some of you are doing very well in this class, and hats off to you and congratulations. Some of you really need to pick up the pace a little bit. We are entering week 6, and for those of you that don't know, this will be the last CA 121 course. So should you not make it through the course, you're going to run into some challenges and have to take some steps backward in the program. And Chef Suzanne and I do not want that for you. We want to help you get through this course and succeed. So, now's the time to do it. And we strongly believe that you can do it. It is possible. And you have a lot of support. Sometimes, people take a look at the week's assignment, and it's like tackling an elephant, and that's very, very difficult. So we like to break our assignments up into smaller portions. One day we'll plan it out. The next day we'll buy our mise en place. The next day we'll prepare it, and then the next day we'll send it over to Chef Suzanne to get a feedback on it. And instead of trying to attack it all and waiting to the end of the week to do it. So I think time management is a little bit of a concern for some of the students. Chef Suzanne and I would love to help you out with that. So pick up the phone, give us a call. That's what we're here for. And then, certainly it took me a couple of years to learn this, but when I was younger, I had lots of drama in my life. And now that I've gotten a little older, I've chosen not to take any drama into my life And there are times when you need to put the drama and all those other types of things to the side and really focus on your goals and developing a better life for yourself. So it's our recommendation that you invest the time to do this, because you are building a better tomorrow. Anything to add on to that, Chef Suzanne?
I have also taken some online courses, so I definitely know the struggle sometimes of being at home and having to deal with family and kids and laundry and dinner and that sort of thing. So I always found that some of the best work I was able to do is after everyone is in bed, nice cup of coffee, to be able to get some work done. And I know at my house, when it's late, kitchen's an empty place, so it's a good place to be able to not have to be dealing with any. It's a stress reliever. I love to get in the kitchen and cook. So, you know, it's not a bad way to wind down the day, is you got your mise en place done from yesterday, so you just jump in and get that cooked and maybe just throw it in the fridge for tomorrow night's dinner once the whole family's in bed. So it's all about juggling and, you know, making it a priority, even if it's a late night priority by yourself.
Yeah. That's a great advice. I love that advice. I'm that 4 o'clock in the morning guy that's got my cup of coffee in here and everybody's still asleep and I can get a lot of work done. But everybody needs to be reminded of the fact that you know, success requires sacrifice at some point in time in the journey, and education requires you to focus, and you have to sacrifice some of the other things that are in your life that have a tendency to consume additional time, leisure activities being one of them. So the more you sacrifice today, the more successful you're going to be tomorrow. So give us a chance to help you. That's what we're here for, and that's what we want to see. Let's take a look at week 5 here in CA 121. We'll scoot on over to the class page here and take a look at it. Hopefully everybody got to see the lovely video up here at the top. And then research materials this week are going to be really valuable, and they are going to tie in directly with the knowledge check. Last week, a lot of students took one or the other, and it is not a choice of knowledge checks. It is both knowledge checks are required, and this bottom knowledge check right here is based on the research materials and the information that you're going to get from the live session this evening. The conversions knowledge check is only 5 questions. It's quite simple. And if you need reference material, you can easily go back up to week 1. And right here, conversion help folder has all of the answers in it. So it'll probably take you 4 or 5 minutes to go through this knowledge check. So make sure you do both knowledge checks to get the point. There's no reason not to pass this course because you didn't do the knowledge checks. It's very important. This week we are working on poaching with steamed vegetables, beurre blanc, and then you also have the option of doing that in papillote plus a beurre blanc sauce. So that is on the slate for this week here in CA 121.
I'm really excited about this one. I like this one.
Yeah.
It looks and sounds so much more elaborate and intense than it is, and I find that students are blown away at how nice, especially the Papillote, how awesome it looks and how little it is really involved, and what an amazing dish it produces. So this is probably one of my favorite because it's like the wow factor in this particular dish.
It really is, and I get excited about this one as well. You know, it's kind of one of those $30 dishes that you see at a restaurant, and it's really not that complicated to do. I know down in Mexico we do it with banana leaf, the empapillote, and then I've seen some people even use aluminum foil for it, which doesn't work well because the acid from the lemon will actually eat through that. So it's something you have to be careful with. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. We're going to go through the papillote in detail. I mean, we hope to see a lot of students do that this week. It's pretty exciting. We want to cover the discussion forum here a little bit. It was a little bit weak last week, and I think there's a lot more energy and effort that we can put into it to do a better job. This week we do have the prior week, I'm sorry. This week we do have a discussion forum, Your initial post is due no later than Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, which equals 6 points for your initial post. And then each day after is minus 1 point. So for example, if the initial post is due this Saturday and you miss it by a day and you turn it in on Sunday, it will be worth only 5 points. And then on Monday, 4 points, Tuesday, 3 points. You must reply to 2 other students' post no later than Tuesday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Each response is worth 2 points. So the whole discussion forum is worth 10 points in total. So just to make a quick review, that's initial post is due by this Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then you must respond to 2 other students' posts no later than Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then taking a look at what the actual discussion forum is this week, you're going to be calculating the cost of a dish. Most of you have been through this in a rudimentary fashion one way or another. And there are very specific directions for the discussion forum this week. All of these directions are listed under the heading of the discussion forum. So when you click on the tab, you will also find them there. And then this will PowerPoint will be posted on the class page following the class as well. So you'll have all the information at your fingertips. You're going to list out all the ingredients in your chosen dish, right? So you're going to choose a dish. You're going to list out all the ingredients from salt, pepper, to sauces, to the protein, parsley leaves, whatever you use. You're going to write down all the ingredients. And then you're going to calculate the cost of each ingredient as close as feasibly possible, right? So for example, if 1 tomato costs 40 cents, you get 8 slices from that tomato. And then you'll know that if you're going to use 2 tomato slices, that would be 10 cents based on the math right there. And then you're going to add together the cost of each ingredient. Do not include labor cost. This will be the cost of the menu item. And then you're going to multiply the cost by 3 for most restaurants. That'll give you a 33% food cost, and that will help you make a little profit right there. So that's going to be in your discussion forum this week. Oops. So I got a little happy there with my finger. I was going a little fast. But that is the actual discussion forum this week. Once again, that information will be posted on your class page in the PowerPoint, and then it's also be listed on the class page when you click discussion forum. All the information is right there. Don't forget your knowledge checks. Both are required this week. And then moving on to poaching fish, which is something I love to do. The poaching technique goes far beyond just fish. In industry, we'll use it for chicken. We poach eggs quite a bit. We don't use the traditional court bouillon, so we'll talk about that here in just a moment. What else do we like to poach, Chef Suzanne?
Oh, my favorite thing is chicken for sure. I have to say that's probably the thing I have poached more over the years, but I don't sound like a little bit like Forrest Gump, but chicken breasts, chicken thighs, bone-in chicken, whole chicken. So, to me, chicken.
Yeah.
So much chicken.
All right. So poaching is a great technique. It's done by the heat is conveyed by the liquid, which is called a court bouillon, and we're going to talk about how to make that here in just a moment. But there's little or no fat involved in the cooking process, so oftentimes it's perceived as a much healthier method of cooking. So let's take a look at our slide here to see how that goes. And this is the definition of the court bouillon, and it's a quickly cooked broth, basically, and it traditionally has mirepoix, some citrus, some herbs in it. The mirepoix can vary a little bit from region to region. I've done it quite a bit of times with leeks versus onions, parsnips versus carrots, and then the herbs are traditionally parsley stems, and bay leaf, and then some type of citrus, traditionally lemon, a little bit of white wine in there as well. And you'll combine all those ingredients and bring your broth to a boil for about 20 minutes, and then quickly strain it out to get rid of all the other stuff. Some people like to strain it, some people don't. What about you, Chef Suzanne? Do you like to strain it?
I think excuse me, I think typically I strain it, but there are some times when it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, and so it's just one extra step. And so if I'm not using the court bouillon for anything else, so if I'm not serving it, the a la nage or anything like that, then straining isn't necessarily, I think it just depends on the dish.
Right. So it depends on where you work at. So don't be surprised if the chef says, no, don't strain it. Or we're just talking about the classic traditional method here and the traditional technique. Now, for this week's exercise, if you want to alter it a little bit, if you want to add some Latin flavor by chili mulatto or a pasilla chili in there to give a little bit of roasted beef flavor, that's perfectly fine as well. Or if you want to mix up the herbs a little bit to suit your flavor profile, that's perfectly well. We're really focused on the technique of poaching this week. So if you want to change your court bouillon slightly, that's fine with us. So once again, you're going to strain that after boiling it for about 20 minutes. A lot of places, it's very common as well. They'll poach in milk. I know halibut poached in milk is absolutely delicious. And then quite a few places like to do it in a flavorful broth. I've seen it done in a chicken broth or a beef broth. So this whole exercise, once again, is going to be limited to your creativity. Chef Suzanne and I just want to make sure that you are following the poaching technique. Did I get all that right?
You did. And orange roughy is also really good poached in milk. That's how my mom made it my whole life. It was always poached.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very delicate, very good.
Yeah. We used to serve quite a bit of veal sweetbreads at one place that I worked at, and we would pre-poach them, or par-poach them, so to speak, in milk, which came out wonderful because the lactic acid in there helped break down some of the sinew, and that was kind of nice. So taking a look at our next slide, poaching fish. It works really well for very delicate foods, especially seafood. Fish has a tendency to flake apart and break up quite a bit, especially when it comes to grilling or sauteing. So poaching fish will generally keep the fish quite whole. Chef Suzanne's favorite chicken is absolutely wonderful when it's poached.
And I can't believe I missed fruit. I love poached pears.
Oh yeah, poached pears.
Did we miss that? It was all about the chicken, so I forgot about the pears.
Yeah, and we poach those in wine, don't we? Yeah, wine and sugar. And one of my most favorite things are the pears, poached, nice Bosc pears, poached in port wine, which is just absolutely delicious with a little bit of vanilla ice cream. Yeah, just leave me alone. I'm fine. I'm happy. Yeah. So poaching does run the gamut from breakfast to lunch to dinner to desserts as well. So there's plenty of different menu items that you can work with. So going back to our slides here. So we talked about the fish. Eggs, for example, for breakfast, we do a lot of poaching of eggs. Traditionally, that's done in water with a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice. And what the acid does is it helps keep those egg whites coagulated. It helps keep them together. You've all seen poached eggs before, and they come out in a nice teardrop shape. And that acidity in the water is what helps that happen. Now, temperature is extremely critical when it comes to poaching. If you're going to take a piece of orange roughy, for example, or another delicate fish like flounder, and you put it into a boiling liquid, it's going to shred or break that fish apart. So you're really going to want to watch the temperature of your liquid this week in your court bouillon. You're going to want to have it right in between 160, 180 degrees. It's got to be down below a boil, which what we call is a simmer, right? Water boils at 212 degrees, so we need a simmering liquid. We like to keep that right between 160 and 180 degrees to cook that fish nice without breaking it up. One of the big things about poaching, it requires patience. You have to go slow. Poaching is not a quick cooking technique. You're going to put a chicken breast in there, you have to let it take its time. A lot of people I've seen before, they want to crank that water up. And what that does is that forces those proteins to shrink very quickly, and it excretes the moisture, and then you have a very dried piece of fish or poultry when you're done. So be very, very conscientious about that. Now, some of the stuff that's in here is kind of personal preference, and as you grow within this industry, you're going to notice that a chef's preference will kind of dominate that specific technique. Chef Suzanne just brought up poaching orange roughy in milk. I prefer to poach a very thicker fillet, such as salmon or halibut. Neither one is wrong. It's just a personal preference, and that's what makes us special as chefs, because we interpret what we like and we share that with our guests, and so that makes a big difference versus just a generic regular place. It is critical that you do use your thermometer. You're going to want to take your fish to at least 145 degrees. If you're working with a drier fish, such as a cabiria, or fish from warm water, like grouper or some members of the tuna family or a mahi, if you take it much beyond that 145 degrees, it's going to become kind of dry, and you don't want that. So be very conscientious, especially with the tilapia, the snapper, or the trout that's really delicate. Be very conscientious about that. There's some pictures down here on the bottom of this page, what your poached shrimp should look like. This looks like a little trout right here, some salmon, and this could be halibut, or my favorite fish in the world, which is the ugliest fish I've ever seen. What's the ugliest fish you've ever seen, Chef Suzanne?
Oh, the ugliest fish would be, oh my gosh,
From very far south of here.
I'm blanking. It's the
Chilean sea bass.
Oh, I didn't think Chilean sea bass was that ugly. What's that? I'm totally blanking. The poor man's lobster. Poor man's lobster.
Wait. Now, oh, yeah, hang on.
What's it called? I'm blanking.
Is it it's not a turbo?
No, I think turbos are pretty ugly too, but
yeah.
It's good. I'm gonna have to Google it now because I cannot. I'm literally drawing a blank. The poor man's lobster. What it's called? I'm gonna look it up.
Now I know. Yeah, that Chilean sea bass has that long jaw that comes out and up over the front of the face, and it's just not the most. But that is on the endangered species list, so we probably really shouldn't be broadcasting it too much. But it is a great fish. Should you be able to pay $20 a pound for it?
Monkfish. Monkfish is ugly.
Yes, monkfish are very ugly. I will agree, most definitely. They are quite ugly. So that kind of wraps up the poaching of the fish. Once again, make sure that you do take it to the 145 degree level. You want to create your court bouillon by adding your mirepoix, your choice of seasonings and herbs. You're going to bring that to a boil for about 20 minutes. You'll strain the liquid out for this week's exercise. That is required on the rubric. And then you're going to put it back into a pot, preferably a shallow pot. It doesn't have to be a very deep vessel for this exercise. You're going to poach your shrimp, your seafood. You're going to add it when it reaches about 160, 180 degrees. You'll add your seafood to that. You're going to cook it to an internal temperature of 145 degrees. When it comes out, make sure you're gentle. Slip the spatula underneath it, lift it up, tilt it to the side slightly to allow all the moisture to run off. I recommend putting it on a rack for just a moment to let it dry off. There's nothing worse than when somebody pulls a poached item out of the liquid, puts it onto the plate, and then it's in a pool of liquid. Chef Suzanne, I think, will kind of go crazy this week if she sees your food swimming while it's on the plate. Isn't that correct?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah, because I've seen more than my fair share of very sad poached eggs kind of swimming in water on a breakfast plate. Very sad.
Right.
Bring that water off.
Absolutely. So make sure that you use a perforated spatula or a perforated utensil to be removing that seafood from the poaching liquid. Any questions about that so far, Crystal? Anybody have any questions? All right.
We're good, Chef.
We're good. Okay. When you ask me a question, make me feel good. I mean, come on, anything. All right. We're going to move on next to steamed vegetables, which is a part of the assignment this week. We're not talking about boiling vegetables. Boiling vegetables is a little bit different. Boiling vegetables a lot of times will extract a lot of the minerals and vitamins that are in the vegetables. So they have a tendency to think that steaming vegetables is much healthier for you. So it doesn't actually get submerged into the water. You're going to use some type of vessel that's perforated. It could be done in a saute pan with a small amount of liquid in the bottom, or it could be done in a strainer basket over boiling water with a top over that, which will allow the vegetables to steam. Let's take a look at how we do that here real quick. One of the biggest mistakes that we've seen over and over in industry is the chefs will have a tendency not to cut uniform, consistent sizes when it comes to this exercise. So if you're going to be working with carrots, right, you're going to want to make sure that they're all cut the same dimension, which allows them all to cook evenly and consistently. So you're not going to have mushy carrots and raw carrots at the same time in your dish. You're going to want to avoid using a smaller cut like a julienne, because what happens is these steamed vegetables will have carryover heat once they are removed from the steam. Once they get onto the plate, they're going to continue cooking, and by the time they get to your guest, they will be mush, and you want to make sure you avoid that. So we like to use a little bit of a larger cut, a bâtonnet, a rondelle, medium dice, even a large dice works fairly well for this exercise, so that's certainly suggested. I prefer to use a lower moisture vegetable for this exercise. A lower moisture vegetable would be considered a carrot, broccoli, cauliflower, something that's a little bit more substantial, that's going to be able to hold up to the steam and hold till it gets to your guest plates. So take that into consideration. When you're steaming the vegetables this week, you're going to want to make sure that you pull them out when they're a little bit underdone. We call that al dente, a little bit tender to the tooth, but still with a little bit of crisp and crunch in them, because once again, vegetables are very susceptible to that carryover heat, and you want your customers to be able to bite in. You don't want to feed them baby food, if that makes sense at all. One of the biggest mistakes that we also see is people have a tendency to like to mix vegetables together. From sugar snap peas to carrots to broccoli, and put it all and then steam it all at the same time. Well, all of those vegetables cook differently. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
Absolutely. I see that a lot in assignments where folks are wanting to get really creative with the veggies, but when they're cooking at different rates and cook it, because they're, like a carrot's going to take longer to cook than a bell pepper. And so you got to keep those things in mind, that you either need to time when you cook them or how you do it. And it's even more noticeable with something like steaming.
Right. Absolutely. So in order to prevent that from happening, if you do choose to use a blend of vegetables, which is perfectly acceptable, there's no problem with doing that, you're going to make sure that you add your most fibrous, low moisture vegetables first, allow them to cook a little bit, and then work your way up until you get to your quick cooking vegetables, such as bell peppers if you choose to use them, or even a softer vegetable such as sugar pea or snow pea, something that cooks very quickly. So be conscientious of that as you're working with that this week. This is a nice blend right here, some steamed vegetables. Asparagus works absolutely fantastic.
It's not the right page, Chef.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Oh,
you got your
Oops.
desktop background on the side. And actually, I'm kind of glad you're pulling that back up, because I was just going to say that on the next picture with the veggies on it. There's a picture of, there it is, in the center picture with the asparagus. That little steamer basket, they even have those at like the Family Dollar. They're
Yeah.
not expensive at all. They're like $3 or $4. I don't know, probably $8 tops, even at say Walmart. And they're a nice thing. They're adjustable and they don't take up a lot of space. So that's a nice thing to have to be able to steam. Good investment. Also, I'm not sure if you said a colander, because I have used in a pinch at my own house a colander to steam with. So, but those are nice investments.
Great suggestions, great suggestions. You'll see them in most commercial kitchens. We also use what we call a pasta basket, which is a mesh basket. We'll set that down over the top of the pot and cover it up and allow it to steam in there as well. In industry, we use large commercial steamers that are pressure steamers, and we'll use large perforated pans, load them up, and then throw them in there, especially with banquets and that type of thing. They're very, very common for that process as well. You don't want to season your vegetables until they come out and they're fully cooked. They do say that this method is fantastic because it's very low in fat, which I'm not sure the whole theory behind that. But generally when they come out of the steamer or your steamer contraption, we'll toss them in a little bit of oil, drawn butter, olive oil. That gives them a nice sheen, gives them better mouthfeel, and then we'll also give them a nice seasoning at that point in time as well. So don't forget to do that, because if you just pull them out and put them onto the plate, number one, they're going to be extremely bland, and then number two, they're not going to look very appealing either. So make sure that you hit them with a little something. I want to show this video. This video is also on our class page. It's about a minute long. And then this shows a different technique of doing it in the pan, which I think is kind of a cool technique. It's done with a compound butter. Compound butters are butters that have additional ingredients added into them, such as shallots, lemon juice, parsley, Worcestershire, garlic. We'll mix all that in, then we'll cool the butter back down, and that creates a compound butter. So let's take a look at this video real quick. I think this is Chef Caesar.
I agree. I believe it is Chef Caesar. He's in a lot of these. I see his hands in a lot of videos.
So what he's done, he's just added his compound butter, and now he's adding shallots in there to sweat them. He's going to break down the fibers in the shallots, which are going to release the moisture in the juice and enhance the flavor. For this, he's using a really delicate vegetable, a rapini, or a broccoli rabe, I think it's also called, which is excellent for this because it's not a real thick, heavy vegetable, and will cook fairly quickly as well. So what's happening now, he did add a little bit of additional liquid. However, butter is also 20% moisture traditionally. And as that butter cooks and that other moisture in there begins to steam and evaporate, it's also cooking the vegetables. So it's a method of doing it in the pan. He likes butter. Lots of it. But as you see, that's an absolutely gorgeous dish, extremely flavorful. And that's just a different method of being able to do it. So certainly take that into consideration. That's an option for you to do as well this week.
That's a really good example of how steaming is not necessarily the healthiest when you put in all that butter, but man, it looks delicious.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what? Butter just makes everything better. I don't know. You can just leave it, forget the rapini and just give me the butter. That'd be much better. I forgot to point out on this previous slide here, I wanted to share with you real quick, going back to the court bouillon. There's some examples down here at the bottom of the page of what your court bouillon should look like as it's coming up to a boil before you're going to strain it. And it's just basically a clear, simple liquid that's cooked for about 20 minutes and then strained. So that's what you're going to be looking for in the actual process. So just to wrap up the vegetables really quick, remember to cut your vegetables in uniform size. It's extremely important. This basket right down here that Chef Suzanne pointed out is a great option. Very inexpensive. They fold up so they kind of stay out of the way. You could put them into a strainer basket over boiling water, which will allow them to steam as well. And then also, if you're going to be using different vegetables, make sure that you cook the vegetables first. They're going to take the longest, and then add to it to get the vegetables cooked properly. And we also talked a little bit about giving them some sheen and seasoning when they come out of the steamer contraption. Very, very important. This method that we just saw down here in the video with Chef Caesar is certainly applicable for this week as well. That is a steamed vegetable. So should you choose to do something like that as well, that is not a problem. So any questions regarding steamed vegetables? Nothing. Great cooking method that goes very well with poached, because you kind of have that spa type cuisine flavor going on, even though we do add lots of fat to it after it comes out of the poaching liquid. So it kind of gets you one way or the other in the long run there. Now let's move on to another fantastic cooking method here, and I know Chef Suzanne loves this, and I love this one as well. This is en papillote. En papillote is basically, traditionally speaking, is in a form of parchment paper, which we'll get to in a moment, and then it's got a layer of julienne vegetable, your seafood or your other protein, traditionally chicken as well, and then some type of compound butter, citrus on the top, folded over, cooked in the oven, which allows the steam to be entrapped by the parchment paper and really steams the product, almost like poaching. So do you have anything to add to that, Chef Suzanne?
I don't think so. I know you've got some pictures, and I know that helps. And typically they're served in the parchment because it's such a nice presentation tableside. So I think that's why I like this one, is the presentation is very nice. Absolutely.
Presentation is key in this dish. What we do in the finer end restaurants is we'll put the plates down on the gueridon, and the gueridon is the fancy cart that we have in the dining room, and we'll push that up to your table, and your captain or your back waiter will open the parchment paper, and you see the steam escape at the table, and you get that aroma, and it just builds excitement for eating, and it's really nice. Not to mention what's inside of it is extremely delicate and delicious. So papillote is a technique that's been around for a lot of years. I'm on the right screen, right?
Yes, you are. That is the right screen.
I'm on a roll. Yeah. So it's traditionally done in parchment paper, which is folded over. We're going to show you how to cut that here in just a moment. And you need to have the key ingredients in there. Number one, we talked about some julienne vegetable. That julienne vegetable traditionally have leeks or other aromatic vegetables in there, which will help flavor. You will have your protein, which you're going to make sure you season it quite well when you put it in there. And then a compound butter, which we just talked about. Maitre d' butter is very common. Maitre d' butter would be parsley, shallot, garlic, Worcestershire, lemon. And we'll mix all that into the butter. Then we'll roll that into a log, cool it down, and then slice it into disc. And then as we're assembling the papillote, we'll put that onto the piece of fish. And then we'll generally top it with citrus. Some people will do dill. Some people will do all sorts of different things. So it's really limited to your imagination. Most commonly, you're going to see en papillote done with fish. But for Chef Suzanne's sake, with chicken, it certainly goes well in there. Isn't that right?
I do enjoy chicken. Actually, I think probably my favorite is en papillote is shrimp. But when
Yes,
you do that, the veggies have to be really small because shrimp cooks so fast, and so the veggies have to be really small. But I enjoy shrimp that way too. So, but chicken, yeah, because I love chicken. So.
Absolutely, yeah. In my in one of my restaurants a little while back, we took banana leaf, and then we just took a nice piece of Chilean sea bass, cut the fillet in half, put the compound butter in between it with capers and shallots, and then wrapped it once again in the banana leaf, and then we did that in the mesquite pizza oven, and that just created a wonderful dish because that banana leaf or the parchment paper will trap the steam and just force it to gently cook, and that butter just adds that flavor. We mentioned aluminum foil does get used on occasion for this. We discourage that because acid, especially that in the citrus, will eat through the aluminum foil, and you're going to get some specks on your food, and it can be quite kind of nasty. Down here at the bottom of the page, we'll see what we can see what the en papillote looks like. This is when it comes out of the oven. They've just split it open right here. It's got a gorgeous fold right around the lip, which is really important because it traps in the steam, but it also creates a nice aesthetic appeal to it. We're going to show you how to do that here in just a moment. And these are some that have just come out of the oven as well. Parchment paper is not going to engulf into flames. Don't be concerned about that. Parchment paper has a fairly high heat resistance level to it as well. This one here in the middle, we chose this one because it does have some different items in here. There's some new potatoes and peppers, and these look maybe fingerling potatoes in here. They're quite small, so they're going to cook a lot quicker with all that moisture in there. So that's an option as well to remember. So going on, before we get started on this part, the en papillote, the cutting of the parchment paper is something that you have to pay attention to. Make sure that you cut your pieces consistently. There's nothing worse than serving en papillote at a banquet and having some that are 12 inches, some that are 6 inches, and some that are falling off the sides of the plate. So we love instant gratification, and I'm guilty of taking 12 pieces of parchment paper, trying to cut them all out at the same time, and it doesn't work so well sometimes. So Chef Suzanne agrees with that, absolutely. So let's take a look over here at our slides. And what you're going to do is, first thing you're going to do is you're going to take a half sheet of parchment paper. A full sheet of parchment paper is 18 by 26. It's quite large, and so we'll start with a half sheet, which is right around 12, 14 inches. This one says 16 inches here, and you're going to fold that perfectly in half. And then once you have folded it in half, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut a heart-like shape out of the parchment paper, and you can see that right here. Remember, the paper is folded in half. When you open this up, it'll look like a heart. So you're cutting half a heart right here. And then once you've opened it up, you have your heart-shaped parchment right here. You're going to open it up. Your first layer underneath on the bottom will be traditionally a julienne vegetable or aromatic vegetable that's going to cook fairly quickly. And then you'll do your protein on top of that. Your protein should have a nice layer of seasoning on it. Don't forget to do that because that seasoning will cook right into it. But remember, you don't want to season your protein too early in the process because the sodium does draw the moisture to the surface. And then, as mentioned, we'll do a compound butter. Some people like to do dill, and then lemon slices over the top are a nice, nice touch as well because it adds that nice flavor of acidity. And the lemon skin has oil in it, which really complements the flavor of the seafood. Once you've layered your dish up inside your parchment paper, you're literally going to fold it back over just like it was when you cut it. So you're going to end up with half a heart again, as shown in this picture right here. And then you're going to begin by making your first fold. And your first fold will be on the teardrop end, not on the sharp end, but on the teardrop end. And you're going to fold it in approximately 1/4 inch. So you see how this is curved in right here, or folded in. And then the next one, you will go halfway down that fold and fold in 1/2 inch once again. And you're going to work your way all the way around, creating that seal. But you're going to want to go halfway in, fold, halfway in, fold, halfway in, fold. So you have nice consistent folds all the way around. And then when you get to the tail end right here, which is at the top of the heart, you're going to traditionally tuck that under your poppy oat. So you will have a nice, I like to think of it as a lima bean type shape. Is that a good analogy, Chef Suzanne?
I think it is, and I don't know if there's any more pictures here, but actually one of those pictures where you had back a couple sides, actually I think had a better last photo. Go back and another one, go back. There we go. The one on the right, you can really see those little folds.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one actually is like a better overhead view where you can see that each
Correct.
fold kind of catches the fold before it. So ultimately it kind of seals in and creates that little, I guess it does look like a lima bean now that you mention it. I guess.
Yeah.
About it. And it holds it all together so that none of that steam is going to escape out any little areas in between those folds. So I think that that picture actually is a better last picture.
Correct. I would agree. That it's actually part of the presentation. I've seen a lot of cooks or chefs prepare this over the years, and you get this wadded up look, and it's all greasy and all, you know, folded and crunchy and all that kind of stuff by the time it gets out to the customer, and it just doesn't create a very appealing effect. Part of the dining experience is we like everything nice, neat, and organized, and your folds should be crisp. It's very, very important to focus on that. If you don't get it the first time, don't give up. Sometimes it takes a little bit of practice to get these down and looking good, so just be patient with yourself. It will happen. And then after you open up your poppy oat here, this is going to be what you're looking for. You're going to want to cook it at about 350 degrees until it gets to 145 degrees on your internal temperature for seafood. That's going to vary. We can't tell you if it's going to be 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes because, you know, your fillet is going to be a little bit thicker or thinner than what we're forecasting. So you're going to have to keep an eye on that. You're going to want to make sure you can put this into a saute pan to cook it or onto a half sheet pan. Don't put it right onto the rack in your oven because it might leak and that could be messy. Yeah. Moving on to our next subject. I know we did this in 101 or 102 for those of you that have been through that class. We did make beurre blanc. Beurre blanc is a traditional white wine butter sauce. A lot of butter in this class tonight, huh?
Seriously, I'm all about some butter, and I adore beurre blanc, so I'm really excited. I don't make it near as often as I should because I like it, but there's a lot of butter, so it's probably best.
Yeah, I make it every Friday, Saturday, and Monday night. So I mean, it's not to feed my family; it's to feed guests. So I'm still doing it. It's a traditional emulsified pan sauce. An emulsification is a temporary suspension of two non-binding ingredients, right? And in this instant, we're working with a white wine reduction and butter, and we're going to bind those two ingredients together to make a sauce that reaches nappe consistency. You traditionally want to use a drier white wine, such as a Chardonnay for this. You want to avoid sweet white wines, such as a Riesling. Those can be a little bit overkill for this particular dish. Traditionally, it's prepared by just taking your white wine, reducing it by about half or 2/3 with citrus. A lot of people like to put cracked black pepper in there, shallots, herbs, lemon. It's pretty much your choice. Once you get that reduction down, you want to turn your heat down real low and scoot your pan to the side. And you should have already cut some butter into cubes. And then you're going to stir with a whisk the cubes of butter one at a time into your wine reduction. As they emulsify, you can add in another one. You want to make sure you don't get this too hot because it's a very temperature sensitive sauce. And should you allow it to boil again, you'll allow it to separate, you'll let them be free. And you don't want that. You want your sauce to reach Nappé consistency. It'll reach Nappé consistency as you add more butter, it thickens. Nappé consistency, for those of you that forgot, is when you put a spoon in there, you could rub your finger down the back and the sauce will stay separated. That's a pretty easy way to define it. So these are some more pictures of the Beurre Blanc. When you complete when you're done adding your butter to this, you're going to season it and then taste it. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that so many chefs make is they don't taste the food before they serve it. That food has your face and your reputation on it. So before it goes out to the table, make sure that you taste the product with a disposable spoon, preferably, and check the flavor. Do you have anything else to add to the butter sauce, Chef Suzanne?
Actually, can you put that up one more time? When it comes to Beurre Blanc, it should look exactly like it does in these pictures, where it looks like a sauce. It doesn't look like melted butter, right? Because like Chef said, he just said if it's a very temperamental, it wants to be at a certain temperature, and if it gets too warm, then it starts to basically break apart, and then you just have melted butter with bits of shallots and white wine and lemon juice kind of floating around in it. So it should have the consistency of a sauce, like a real thin gravy, but it's obviously made of butter. But you want it to have that nice emulsified consistency. And something else that we're dealing with photos, so have your camera ready, because once you put your Beurre Blanc on something, if it sits for too long, it can start to separate also. So all of this is very temperamental time-wise when it comes to your photos.
And if your sauce does not begin to thicken and it looks as though it has very small drops of water in it, micro drops, so to speak, and it hasn't thickened, that means that you never created that emulsion in the first place. You might want to consider going back and starting over again. Be patient with this sauce. It takes practice to perfect. That's why we're chefs. We're not home cooks. We are chefs, and we have learned these techniques. So be patient with yourself and give yourself time to do it. Make sure that you follow specific direction when doing this. It's really, really critical. And then as far as the flavor profile of the Beurre Blanc, that's up to you. I've seen it done with roasted shallots. I've seen it done with alternate forms of Calvados, which is the Spanish brandy, and some other types of liquors. I don't get into gins and whiskeys. It doesn't work. I recommend sticking with the dry white wine. That seems to be the most best at this point. Do we have any questions yet? Crystal? Anybody?
I do have one comment.
Sure.
When we were talking about the Papillot, one of the ways to tell if everything is sealed correctly and it's cooking correctly is as it cooks, your parchment normally kind of puffs up a little bit, which is very cool also. But you'll see it start to rise, and if you end up with 2 or 3 in the oven that look like they're poofing up and then one just really isn't, you probably didn't get the best seam when you fold it over that parchment. So just something to be aware of is you want it to poof up. That means it's kind of, is poof a word? It should be a word. You want it to poof up so that it's kind of keeping that steam in there and it's, it's poofing.
Great suggestion. Great point. Yeah, absolutely. And as well, if you see liquid dripping out all over your pan and it is flat, then you probably didn't get your seal done too well. Before we move on to our assignment, I wanted to show you a couple of pictures this week about what Chef Suzanne is going to be looking for as far as the finished product, which I think will help identify this. I believe this is turbot up here with some nice poached asparagus. This looks like a nice butter sauce on the plate. And then we have some Haricot Courvert, which is a thin green bean, so to speak, a French green bean, and this has a nice butter sauce on it as well. This looks like a piece of seared salmon versus poached, but it's still, I like this picture because it's got nice height and color and texture to it, and so does this one over here. This is a real simple one over here. It's a basic plate, but it also accomplishes some height, color, and texture. And so do the rest of them down here as well. These are caper berries, which is the actual berry from a Mediterranean plant. They're kind of salty, and they add a great savory flavor to your dish and to your butter sauce as well. Readily available in your supermarket, and it's got some lemon segments tossed around into it as well, which is super delicious. This looks like just a nice piece of poached cod right here with some nice vegetables in a very rustic fashion. So there's a couple of suggestions for you to get going on this week's assignment. And then taking a look at our assignment this week. Give me a moment, I gotta get there. I've got too many monitors.
When it comes to capers, if anybody's looking for those for this week, they're normally over by things like olives. Normally, that's where I seem to find them at the grocery store. Sometimes over with seasonings, but I normally find them over with things like olives and pickles.
Yes.
I mean, like up on a high shelf for the expensive things, like a jar of capers.
Tiny jar like that, yeah. I love capers, especially for making tapenade, which is a great Spanish spread or accompaniment to chicken. I've served it. I've actually stuffed a lot of chicken breast with Manchego cheese and tapenade by running a steel through the center of the chicken breast and then piping the tapenade and then melting Manchego over for the presentation. Super delicious with the olives and sun-dried tomato in there.
I'm a chicken piccata fan, so we normally have capers in the fridge at all times.
Oh, there you go. I love chicken piccata. Yeah. So and then even the nonpareil capers, the larger ones, when they're deep fried, are delicious because they've got that nice crunch. Capers also go great on pizzas, believe it or not.
I don't believe I've ever had capers on a pizza, but I do love them fried with carpaccio.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. We do a chicken piccata and it's got the fried capers on it. Makes me wiggle when I think about it. So moving on to our assignment here this week. I think we covered most of the vital information, and I hope we did. This PowerPoint will be posted on the class page once again. We have our court bouillon. Just remember, we're going to bring that our Maripon, our seasonings, to a boil for about 20 minutes. We're going to strain it out. You need to capture photos of that process right here. Make sure that you do cool it down. Show a thermometer in your cooling liquid, right? We're going to cool it down below 45 degrees. And then your poached protein, you're going to show a picture of your protein prepared for poaching. You're going to season that, not when it goes into the water, when it comes out of the water, please. And then protein in the court bouillon at the proper temperature. We talked about between 160 and 180 degrees. Don't show Chef Suzanne a picture of your poaching protein at a raging boil. That is bad. And then our vegetables, you're going to show your cut on the vegetable. We talked about making sure you have a consistent cut this week and a larger cut as well. And then your steaming process of the vegetables. One of the reasons we like the larger cut, especially in the restaurant industry, is we utilize this technique for a lot of banquets or other functions, and we need to make sure that we do not have overcooked vegetables. And then beurre blanc sauce, we talked about the reduction with the wine, which you're going to take a picture of, whisking the butter into the sauce, so you might want to have somebody help you with that picture. And then making sure you get to nappe consistency. Chef Suzanne would like to see a spoon with your finger run down the back and the sauce remaining separate. And papillote, we really encourage you to do that. That is much better, and that is an or option. So make sure you do that as well. And then final plating, cooked protein with beurre blanc, vegetables, and garnish. We showed you a couple of samples of that as well. And then your narrative and production sheet, critical as you progress in this industry. Did I get it? Did I forget anything?
You did not. I am going to reiterate that everyone has to do beurre blanc. and then you either have you can do Empapio, which is going to have your protein and your veggies in the parchment, or you can do a steamed veggie and your poached protein. So you don't have to do both. So you don't have to do a poach and an Empapio. You'll do one or the other, but everyone does beurre blanc. So it's up to you if you want to do the Empapio and parchment or poach with a steamed veggie on the side.
Absolutely.
That can be a little confusing sometimes.
Yes. And once again, are there any questions from anyone? Anyone? Chef Suzanne, Crystal, thank you guys very much for an awesome live session. I really enjoyed this. And for anybody, if you have any questions when you're watching this during the live session, make sure you pick up the phone. Numbers are listed on the right-hand side of the class page. We are here for your success. Remember, we got to pick up the pace for some of you out there for the remainder of this course. We want to see you pass. CA 121 is going bye-bye. You're not going to have the option to retake this class. So you've got to step it up and get through the course. Let us work with you. Let us help you. I hope everybody has a great week. We look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.